Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams twice a month, be able to read my comic books for free, and get all access to my studio, my creative process, you can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you would like to get a free digital sketchbook, be able to get work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, watching, things that are inspiring me creatively, what I'm consuming, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comics, or if you read digitally on Kindle or Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. I'm the artist, the writer, inker, letterer, gray tones. I did the whole thing myself. It's a self-contained one-and-done story. Or you can pick up my most recent series, Morning Star. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8, the conclusion to the series. Both editions have extensive back matter. They've got character designs, sketches, page thumbnails, layouts, script excerpts, the whole shebang. Get all those at amazon.jeremy.net. And as I mentioned, the free twice a month, the twice a month Patreon subscriber exclusive live streams for Patreon subscribers, those are we have the next one coming up this Tuesday. We've changed the nights. We used to be doing them on Wednesday nights. I realized that my schedule for figure drawing classes I'm taking changes depending on what semester I'm in. So I realized Tuesday night is the one night that I never have class. So I think we're going to stick with Tuesday nights going forward. So that's going to be this coming Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And there will be links in the Patreon stream and on our Discord. I'm going to post those links later today so everyone can be updated, know when that's coming out. And if you want to get in on it, you can hop in there. There's a whole archive of previous art book study groups. It's where we sit down and we look at some of the best art books around, do sketches and studies from them, try to learn as much as we can. There's got to be well over 100 hours worth of live streams up there by now already for you to hop on, check out the archive. And if you happen to miss this one, you can always go back and watch, because this one will be added to the upcoming one will be added to the archive. And on that note, I also want to thank all of my existing patrons. Thank you so much for all of the support you've been giving me over the months or years, however long you've been subscribed. It makes it possible for you to keep continuing to produce work. And I see Dr. Thomas Elliott in the chat. How you doing, man? Thanks for stopping in. Let's get into some artwork. So, I am now considering myself officially done with the Medusa series. I do need to print these out. Let me switch that. You know what? Let's leave it like here. It doesn't make the screen that much bigger to have it centered. I'll just move it to the center. So with this piece, it's pretty much done. I just wanted you guys to be able to see how the finished piece came out. Add a little bit of texture to her skin, so it's not just all just a kind of a flat surface, a little bit of skin texture there. But anyway, what I'm going to do, and I just simply haven't had time to set up the links yet, so I'm going to mention them again once the links are available for you to purchase these as prints. But I'm going to have 2 open edition prints and 1 limited edition print that'll be signed, because the open edition, I do them all with a service that does the printing and shipping for me. So the open editions aren't going to be signed. They're coming directly from the printer. So there's going to be a green one. And there will be the red one. These 2 are going to be the open edition prints. And so, you'll just be able to get these shipped right out to you right away. Now, I haven't figured out what I'm going to sell the limited edition one for. And I think I'm probably going to do like an edition of 20, keep it a low number. But what's going to happen with the limited edition is that's going to be the one in black. And for those, I have to actually have the printer ship them to me so that I can sign them, then repackage them up and ship them forward. So there's only going to be 20 of the black limited edition one. And for those that are interested in NFTs, I probably will do NFTs of them at some point too. But the fact that I don't even have time to set up simple links so you can buy these prints should tell you that I'm just running on vapors in terms of spare time. So there's so many things that I should be doing that I have not been doing business-wise, and I need to kind of dig myself out of a hole. Getting back into my my schedule of working in the office for the day job has ripped 2 hours of additional time out of my life having to commute now. Other than that, it's been good getting back into the office, but that lack of time to do my my own stuff that I was spending commuting, that's been a little bit rough. So, what we're going to be working on today, I've got a whole ton of Medusa ideas. And while I'm in the background, I'm working on writing my next comic. And that's not really something that I can do here on the live stream. So I thought, let me just keep some art coming while I'm doing the writing in the background. I found this old Medusa piece that that I had started doing gray tones on before, and it just never quite came out right. And I realized the problem was that it's a matter of values. You know, when I say values, I don't mean whether you're being a good or bad person. What I mean is your balance of light and dark within a piece. And the main problem was that what I wanted this piece to be was Medusa asleep with a warrior kind of wrapped around her, you know, spooning her. They're cuddling, but the warrior has been turned to stone. And the problem I found is that the darker tone that I went with for the statue, it doesn't really work. It doesn't read as a statue, particularly when all of the snakes that make up her hair are dark. If the snakes had all been light as well, then maybe it might have read like that, but just it didn't, it just doesn't read. Like in the line work, I have a version of this where I could turn the black and white line art off. But within the line work, it just doesn't read the way it needs to. So I thought, well, let me forget about line work altogether and just look at values. Let me just resketch this without any lines and just try and figure out totally what will make it read like a statue. So I did this thumbnail here. And in this one, I decided let's go for her with darker skin and dark snakes. So first off, the fact that she has kind of this porcelain alabaster skin, that just wasn't working. So let's just give her dark skin, and so that her snakes and her skin are all about the same value. And then for the statue, let's try to go for kind of a marble white look. And I am actually pretty happy with how this one came out, although I realized I never did finish. I started doing little sketches on the side of the helmet because it's a weird angle for the helmet. Let me see here. What layer? Let me make sure I'm on the right layer. Let's go up to this layer. All right, this is the layer I want to be on. There we go. Couldn't show up because I was trying to draw underneath that layer. And I'm not even, this isn't even the piece that I'm going to be working on. I'm just finishing this because I want to, I suppose the best way to describe it is I want to finish the mental thought in terms of drawing what this is. Let's see. I see Carol is in the chat. Bonjour. Bonjour, Carol. Thank you for stopping by and watching my live stream. Just working on some thumbnails. On my YouTube channel, thumbnailing image artwork is probably the thing I spend the most time doing. I really like to work out before I do a finished illustration, almost to an overwhelming degree, almost to perhaps an unnecessary degree, but I like to sketch out and thumbnail and figure out where I'm going with the piece before I really dive in. But anyway, to me, I feel like the statue, the warrior, will read more like a statue. If I just make the sword, the helmet, make all of it this white marble material, as opposed to, I guess I was going for something more like a concrete or granite, or like a dark feeling, a dark stone statue feel in the initial sketch, or in the initial colors I was working at. Whereas I think that trying to draw the warrior looking like he is made out of marble, I think that will read much more like a statue. Now, here's where things take a little bit of a turn. So I sketched this out, and I was pretty happy with this composition. Although I do feel like it's a little bland in terms of the blankets and sheets that are just laying there, around them. Didn't really get a sense of the texture, the feeling of them laying in fabric. And I wanted to look at possibly drawing them from different angles. So that's this first sketch that's here. That's more kind of like laying, if we as the viewers are at the foot of the bed, but we're kind of at a higher angle looking down on them. So it's not looking directly above, but giving just a little bit more of a sense of a room. But I looked at that and I thought, maybe let me try another sketch. And I did this little one where we're looking directly in her face, and you just see the statue kind of looking over her shoulder. And I started sketching in this helmet. Okay, now I see why there's different layers. It's because all of the tones for, if I turn this off, whoops, let me leave that on. If I turn this off, you can see this was just a black and white sketch that I did before adding values on there. So let me go back down to this layer. And I'd started painting the helmet in as kind of a darker foreground element. But I think that by keeping the helmet white, even if I add like a little bit of shadow on one side of it, if I keep the helmet white, then it will visually tie in to the warrior laying behind her. And I think that it's more important to visually tie them together as made of the same material, to try and sell that idea that he is a statue, rather than trying to do something where, oh, I've got like a foreground object that's dark, which, that's kind of a nice compositional element, is to have, you might have your middle tones and then a dark, like having a dark value and then a light or middle value and then a dark value in front to create layers of depth. I think that is a wise technique, but I feel like for this particular piece, communicating the material will make more sense. And I'm also wondering if I should do the same thing with the sword that's in the background. And I'm not even sure if I'm completely happy with the position of the sword back here. Now, I will tell you that in doing this sketch, I basically said, I could think of a few different variations in terms of the pose and the angle of these figures. But I like this composition enough that I'm like, why not just go forward with this composition? And instead of spending weeks and weeks and weeks finishing it, just go ahead and do this and, finish off this piece. And the only thing I'm wondering is that if I'm doing this piece as black and white, do I want to add a little spot of color? And if so, what do I want that spot of color to be? Put another layer on top. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just keep messing around with this thumbnail until I'm really happy with it. And then I'm going to just bring it into a new document and redraw it, because as I can see right now, there's a lot of like jagged marks here. And that's because this thumbnail is particularly small compared to the size of the canvas, the screen that I'm working on. But I also want to check, I used a new brush that I hadn't used before. And I want to make sure that these jagged edges that I'm getting are just because of the small size of this. And that if I draw this at a print size, whether it'll still have, jagged marks or not. And also I do feel like I need to adjust the position of that sword, because it's creating a little bit of a tangent in terms of where it's lining up with the blanket. Yeah, it's just creating too much of a visual tangent. So I just need to change the angle somewhat. Let's see here. Yeah, this is the exciting part where I just look at images and I'm just thinking, trying to decide what I want to do. And that's an interesting thing. Art can often feel like it's this very pre-planned, methodic, thought out process, or it can feel very spontaneous where you're just jumping around and making stuff and moving things around. And I tend to jump back and forth between both modes. I will say that I am not as spontaneous as I used to be. I tend to spend more time in the thinking and moving stuff around mode than I do just being in motion. Let's see. Harry is in the chat. Say buongiorno. Buongiorno. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. I'm doing some thumbnails for a Medusa illustration. I'm taking an illustration that I did not think was working well. I think the drawings are fine with this one, but the lighting does not work with the drawing. So I decided to just redo the drawing, the composition completely. So let me copy and paste here. So as I was saying, I don't move as quickly as I used to in terms of just being spontaneous, moving things around, changing them up. But I do think that there is something to be said for the idea of taking your time and doing a bit of trial and error and experimenting with your compositions. But then once you find the thing you're looking for, to just dive right in, wholehearted, with a lot of energy and enthusiasm. And try to get that energy onto the canvas, whether it is a digital canvas or a traditional canvas. Let's see here. Ian Rocks is in the chat. Welcome. Let's see, Harry says the idea of Medusa sleeping with a statue she created is awesome. Thank you. I'm probably going to do multiple versions of this piece. That is something that I've learned in terms of looking at the old masters and doing master studies, is that as much as we would like to believe that everything they did was genius, a lot of times the old masters would do 2 or 3 different versions of a painting, not necessarily when they are just working on the idea for the first time, but they might do 2 or 3 attempts over the course of their career. Like they might do one version of a painting and then come back, 5 years, 10 years later and do a different version of it, maybe for a different client, but maybe just because they feel like they didn't get their best version of it. And And I realized that for myself, there is absolutely nothing wrong with me trying the same image more than once. Um, but yeah, I originally called this one Medusa's husband, and I decided to just call it Medusa's lover. Although now I've been calling all of my pieces, instead of Medusa, I call them Gorgon, only because people use the name Medusa so much that I wanted to start calling it, since the Gorgon is the name of the type of creature they are. I thought by calling my pieces Gorgon, like the Gorgon's lover or the Gorgon's husband, using that name instead might just change up, just might make the piece stand out naming wise by not using the same naming everyone else is. So the main thing I'm trying to do is find a good place to have a sword leaning against the wall that doesn't create a tangent. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. And the real problem I have here, if I can switch to a color, is that the shape of the sheet that's wrapping around here, anywhere I'm putting a sword in here, it still feels, even though I made a line to separate them, it still feels like like it's making a tangent just by being in this same direction. So I don't know if it's a matter of changing the directions. I definitely don't want it to feel like it's just sitting straight up. And now if I do that, it feels like it's making a tangent with this part of the sheet. Or I could do this. I can put a half circle and have a shield in the background. And then have the sword coming out from behind the shield. That can work. That might work. The only problem is trying to create a sense that the sword is laying against a wall as opposed to just floating in space. I don't want it to feel like it's floating. Let's see. Ellie's in the chat. Or Eli. Apologies. Eli is there. Welcome. Thanks for stopping by. I'm just doing some thumbnail drawing here, working on this Medusa piece. Trying to find a way to get a sword in here without creating a tangent. And I don't feel like the angle that I have it at is really working. So let me come in here, erase that again. So let's say move over here so it's far enough that it won't make a tangent. One of the things about doing pieces like these is trying to find the right level of detail for props. Because I don't want to draw a sword that is so cool and badass, like, so well designed that it draws attention away from the theme of the image. But I do want it to feel convincing. And honestly, my illustration style is not particularly lifelike anyway. It's kind of cartoony. Let's see here. Harry mentions maybe a shadow. Where's the light source supposed to be? Well, with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very dim lighting. So the lighting is going to be coming from the viewer. So it's almost like the lighting you would have if you were in a figure drawing class where, the brighter forms are going to be, if I put a little bit of light in here at a low opacity, it would be sort of like front slightly elevated. So the light source would really be just above the viewer's head. So it's a little bit down, but mostly front lit. And from that angle, I could have a shadow. I could have a shadow cast back here behind the sword. But I originally intended to have the back be like completely black, like to almost have just darkness behind them. So that's the reason why, is that if there's darkness behind them, do I want to add extra light to that darkness just so I can have a shadow? So, but see, this is the thing. A lot of times when I'm drawing pieces, I'll start sketching not knowing what my final answer, what my final approach is going to be. I just kind of draw through the answer. In fact, for me, the whole point in this is that these are obviously not the finished piece. They're very rough. But it's in doing these loose sketches that I kind of work through possible variations. Let's see here. Johnny Fits in the chat. How you doing, Johnny? Welcome back. Good to see you. Hope you are doing well. Let's see here. Harry says maybe seeing a stone where the sword is placed like an Excalibur. You know what? That is a possibility as well. I think I'm going to try and just sketch in the silhouette of the sword and shield first, and then see what that implies about the position of the lighting. Hang on, let me undo this. Actually, you know what? What I should do is just go ahead and draw this ring in completely, and then basically draw the shadows into that. Because mostly the other challenge I think I mentioned before in terms of like the amount of detail that I want to put on the sword and the shield, the challenge with these is the same challenge I have with ears. I don't know if you've ever noticed this when drawing ears, but in order for ears to look right, you can't just draw the outside of the ear. You have to give a little bit of the sense of the forms inside of the ear. But if you draw them too well, if you put too much detail in there, then the ears kind of jump out. And ears aren't supposed to jump out. They're just, if you've drawn an ear that's noticeable, I almost feel like you've done it wrong, because it's not a face, it's not a feature of the head that's supposed to draw attention to itself. So unless you're drawing a creature crawling into someone's ear, an ear is supposed to be subtle and understated. And that is something that I find with this piece, is I want both this sword and this shield to look quote unquote correct, but I also don't really want them to draw attention to themselves. I want these two figures to kind of disappear in the back. And part of me just sketching through this is because it may be possible that I'll do this sketch and the whole question of what's going on behind the sword is irrelevant. And I'm already thinking of another answer to this, which is that I was pretty loose about how I drew in the blacks here. Like I didn't make it a flat black. I intentionally left like marks and scratches on the wall. And what I can do is I can leave marks and scratches on the wall and then intentionally black out some of those scratches. Like say I just intentionally come in here and a bunch of loose marks just kind of. Now that's probably way more than I want. But the idea is that if I can create the sense of a line eliminating these marks. Now see, that's just, those are marks I don't want. So let's say if I get back here and put, so it's like continuing on the other side. These need to be a little bit small. No, they don't necessarily need to be smaller. They need to feel more organic. I almost need more to cut away from. Then now I'm still going to have to come in here and cut some of these down because they're standing out much more than I wanted. But just by having little marks in the background that I can get rid of, it gives a sense of there's texture and there's something going on. Like there's a surface back there now, but it's more subliminal. And that's what I was going for, is a subliminal sense of a background without drawing an actual background. Let's see here. Martin's in the chat. Hey, 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 how you doing? Thanks for stopping by. And 47 is like working on a brand new piece. Says looks great already. Thank you so much, sir. Quick recap for those who came in late. So the idea was, here's a piece that I was originally doing. In fact, let me jump out of the, no, I'll stay in the gallery. Anyway, this was a Medusa piece that I had started doing tones on, and I bailed on it. And I can't remember why. It's like over a year ago that I had started gray toning it. And now when I came back to this, I decided to take a closer look, and I realized the problem was that in the ink stage, the values that I was trying to draw didn't really work in terms of like her pale skin versus him feeling like a dark stone. It just did not read like a statue. So my thought was, well, let's reverse it and let's give her darker skin that matches the snake's and make him pale like a marble statue. So the whole idea is that I wanted to have them like a couple spooning, to have them in kind of an affectionate embrace. But in this affectionate embrace, he's turned to stone. So I like to do pieces where I'm not telling you this is what happened. It's more like it creates kind of a weird question because, obviously if he's wrapped around and spooning her, it's affectionate, but then why did she turn him to stone? Or is it one of those things where, I wanted to do a piece that asks more questions than it answers. Like, how did this come together? That's really the question that the piece asks, is how did this warrior end up spooning Medusa and turn to stone? So that's kind of what I'm going for in this piece. Let's see here. Martin says, I believe the piece would work better with his arm not around her, but stiff by his side. Well, you know what? You might be right about that, but then I think for me, a big part of what I was going for emotionally is the idea of him spooning her, him wrapped around in this very affectionate embrace that couples, is very common for couples, to be wrapped up, arms entwined. So I wanted to kind of combine this affectionate embrace with this tragic, or what we would think of as tragic, this warrior being turned to stone. I like doing pieces that have some contradictions to them. So that's really what this piece is about, is contradictions, which, hell, you could say my whole life is about contradictions. So let me go back in here and add a little bit. That's too big. So I'm just trying to add little, I don't know if there's a name for the little metal raised circles on a shield. If anyone does know, please tell me, because I'm actually curious if there's a name for these things. But just adding a little bit of detail on the shield. And while I am zoomed in pretty far, this is, this is, in my opinion, it's a pretty rough thumbnail. Like if you look at, like, this is the full canvas size. And so for a long time, I was just drawing at like this size or maybe this big. Like I try to really work out the major masses first before doing any actual, before doing deeper detail. And I'm gonna have to take a close look for some reference, just what the scabbard of a Greek sword looks like and how much detail to put around that. But I'm only going to try, I'm going to try and keep it to as much detail as absolutely necessary to make it read like the type of weapon that I want. Almost going to like the Alex Toth school of detail, where Toth, the whole point of Toth is that, he definitely references everything and it all looks correct. But in looking correct, he doesn't overlabor, he doesn't belabor the amount of detail in a particular piece. And that's what I am going for, is I don't want it to be overworked. I just want it to be worked. I keep going back and forth in here and drawing in and erasing little bits of marks on the quote unquote wall. Let's see here. 47 says, I like the surreal take on the myth. It's funny. I've got all of these random Medusa Gorgon ideas that I just, have been bubbling up for a while. And I guess now it's time for me to let them out. But yeah, I like ideas where it's not what you think it is. There's a little bit of some weird contradiction. Medusa, Gorgon being curled up, spooning a warrior. That, normally when you see Medusa and a warrior, it's either she killed him or he's trying to kill her. And this idea of just having the two of them in this affectionate embrace, I mean, to me, that is incredibly interesting. I mean, I try to draw and paint the kind of stuff that, like, if I saw another artist doing the same idea, I would want to own that piece. That's the kind of thing that I go for. I don't know, Martin. Maybe if there's an idea, let's say that the arm was straight around down to the side, feeling more like a statue. What do you think would be a good way to give that sense of the affection that I'm trying to get across? Because to me, what makes the piece interesting isn't that he's a statue; it's that he's wrapped around her affectionately. That to me is actually the heart of this piece. It's that, you know, that emotional aspect. And I also feel like I need to do something with his hand because it seems like it gets right here and his hand just disappears into the bed. So I do need to figure out what to do with his hand. Um, I mean, on one hand, it's kind of a cheat in that I look at this and like if you go back up to this one, I don't think anyone really notices that the hand disappears, so I could get away with it. That's the thing. It's a cheat that I could get away with. Just don't draw the hand. But I know the hand is disappearing into the bed and it's weird and it's wrong. So I feel like before deciding to take the easy way out with the cheat, I have to at least try to say, all right, what is the hand doing? I may come back and say, doesn't work without the cheat, but I'm going to at least try. So let's say, well, this sucks because now I have to screw up the really, I'm pretty happy with that arm, but I'm going to have to screw it up because I need some cross contour lines to help me work out the volumes. So let's say you've got the hand coming more forward, or the forearm coming forward. Then I can put the wrist right about here. And then maybe if I just give you one knuckle, and then half a knuckle on this side, half a knuckle on that side, that might read. Let's see here. Now, the real challenge is getting these things. When I have the concentric circles, it's kind of like drawing Colossus from the X-Men. It's a lot easier to say, oh, it's a cylindrical shape coming forward. But when you erase all these and you have to make the anatomy feel volumetric without those lines, that is harder. The other thing I could do is have the hand kind of disappear underneath. I could have the hand disappear underneath this elbow right here. It's the other thing I could try. I mean, this is something that sometimes people have asked me, other artists, they're like, dude, why are you spending all that time on this when you could just get down to, you know, drawing the revised version and coloring it? I mean, I look at this and again, it works. So it's like, am I nuts for wanting to find a place where the hand properly goes? I don't know. I mean, let me just undo some of these concentric circles so I can readjust the position, kind of where the, oops, that's red. So I can readjust where the wrist begins. Yeah, I think if the hand is underneath, I think that right there, that one line to give you the sense that the arm is turning underneath here, I think that does it. So really, I just needed to add an extra line in there to give you a sense of what the anatomy was doing. Which is worth the time, in my opinion, to experiment just to, you know, kick the tires. Because I don't know about you guys, but I hate it when I get very far down the line on a piece, like almost done, and then I realized I made a bonehead anatomical mistake at the drawing phase, that if I had just spent a little bit more time doing corrections, it would have been fine. That's the reason why I'm doing this. I've learned that if it's not coming out, it's worth double checking your piece. Like, I'm gonna flip the drawing in a minute just to look at it from a reverse angle. To be honest, actually, maybe I should wait until I try to go and draw the bigger final version before I really mess around with flipping the drawing. But I think most of us who make art know that experience of going too far with a piece and then finding out it's messed up. So let's see, Carol has a comment here. Says they ended up in bed because she didn't want to be beheaded by him. He was fooled, she was tricky, or they fell in love and forgot to have safe sex. In this case, wearing protective glasses. Well, you know what? You just gave me an idea for another piece, another variation on this, where it's Medusa with a lover and he's blindfolded. So it's almost like it gets into a little like a BDSM kinky, blindfold play, but it's with Medusa, where that makes sense. You have just given me another piece to work on. Thank you. I'm going to do that, Carol. I really am. I'm not next, but I actually know what it might be next. In fact, I was going to try and either rework the values again or move on to scaling this up and tightening up the drawing. I think I'm going to sketch out some thumbnails of the blindfold play, because I don't want to forget that idea. That's a really, really good idea. Let's see. 47ist says there's one reading of the Medusa origin where she was caught with a lover in Athena's temple and was thusly cursed. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I mean, all of these come from me wanting to draw Medusa not necessarily as a villain or a monster, but to draw her as this beautiful, powerful, a little bit scary woman who has this, she has this very destructive power, but, she's a passionate, powerful being, because, I like tough chicks. So let me see. There's a couple of ways I could go with this. I could go with him tied up. I can go with him. I can go with them kissing. There's a wide variety of ways to do this. Let's see here. Let me lower the opacity so I do a little. There we go. And Martin says, how did his arm get around? How did his arm get around her? How did she petrify him with her back to him? That is a good question. I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not going to answer because I don't know the answer. That's one of the things where I say I like to do a piece that asks more questions than it answers. Yeah, that's weird. It is weird, but I like the idea of you not even knowing how this actually happened. Now let me come over here and look at. And by the way, if you want to call bullshit on it because I haven't worked out the answer, that's fair. I just like the idea of a piece that has a certain level of mystery to it. And I actually like the idea that the piece kind of defies logic. Move his torso a little bit closer. So I'm just using simple boxes here just to get the position of their heads and the relationship to each other. Turn this slightly so you're getting the top of her head. Turn this slightly so you're getting underside of his. That torso is out of whack, so let me. And just so you know, he's going to be the one that's lower, that's looking up at her. So I'm kind of trying and going to try and do it so that he's lifting her up off of the ground. And you know, Martin, I'm going to try and do a version where they're facing each other. But you know, this is one of the things I like, or that I want to try and do going forward is you guys saw me working on the Medusa piece, the first Medusa piece. Well, both of those where I spent months and months drawing them. And I think what I want to start doing is doing things that are quicker and just more spontaneous. Got her fingers kind of wrapping around. Got that and that. And now we get to I think I may have drawn this with his face turned a little bit too much away. Bring the opacity down a little bit more. Give me some room to try and get just the right angle for their faces. Let's see here. And thanks for the kind words, Martin. It says, excellent. Love your work. I feel as though it's getting better and better all the time. You know, I greatly appreciate that. You know, I always try to tell people I'm not coming at this like, oh, I'm a master illustrator and I'm here to school or teach people. I don't think that I've said this many times in previous live streams, but I think more often than not, we see people who are doing work and it's very much, you know, kind of it's cute for an amateur level, but it's not polished. And then we see the people who are like the professionals and the master, you know, just the dope artists who can do no wrong. You know, the Mike Mignolas, the Bobby Chews, the Bill Sienkiewicz's, but you never see the people in like that in-between stage where they're just like, you can kind of draw, you know, anatomy. Not every piece is a winner. And it's like, I don't think people get to see that in between phase. We just see genius or like amateur. And I feel like I'm in this in between stage where well, not that I'm saying I'm going to end up being a genius. I'm certainly not saying that. But what I am saying is that, I've been making art for many, many years, and I still don't feel like I've mastered the craft. But I'm at this place where I know the fundamentals, but I haven't mastered the fundamentals. And I think that's an interesting place to be because we don't see that in a lot of artists. And I feel like if I can show you what it feels like to be a little bit further ahead in the creative journey, but you're still pushing, you're still, kicking the tires, you're still messing up. Um, I don't know why I drew well, I guess I am going to need those eye sockets, but my whole point is they're supposed to be blindfolded. I got so caught up in my rant, I forgot what I was doing. But I think showing this in between stage that we don't necessarily get to see, I think it shows people that there's a step in between. It's not, you don't just come out like a fully formed professional illustrator. There's this phase where you're just, I try to speak very positively about it, but the only way to say is that it's a phase where you're just struggling. You're working on getting better. You're, you know what you should be doing with your art, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can do everything that you want to do. And when I say do what you want to do, I mean literally being able to draw what you imagine. I can imagine a lot of things, but I don't necessarily have the craft to pull off all of the things that I imagine. And I think right now, the phase where I'm at in terms of my artistic development is I'm trying to draw things that are hard for me to do. I think there's two sides. There's the people who say, lean into your strengths, and there's the people who say try to draw everything. I think that there's no point in drawing stuff that really makes you miserable, but I myself am interested in challenging myself. I'm interested in getting better at drawing animals, drawing vehicles. I want to be able to draw anything and everything. But I also understand people who maybe say, you know what? I don't like vehicles. I don't want to draw motorcycles. I don't want to draw cars. Shine it. And I say, do the things that make you happy. And if you you don't see Mike Mignola doing like cyberpunk, street racing comics. He likes creatures and mythology. So that's what he draws. And I think that there's something to be said for sticking with that. My interest in drawing, I guess, outside of my lane is probably more out of me being kind of a naturally curious person. So the idea of challenging myself, of doing things that I couldn't do before, or things that attempting things that I'm not sure I can pull off, that's interesting to me for that specific reason. I mean, I have to tell you guys, doing this live stream, just in the fact of having multiple ideas of a piece I was doing, that alone makes it worth sharing work with you guys. That I can be just sitting here talking with you guys and then have a new idea for a piece that I wasn't even planning to do, just coming out of a conversation. Let's make her eyebrows a little bit more pleasant. She's actually enjoying herself. Now, I will tell you that I'm probably going to play around with their facial positions because they really, right now, they do not look like they are about to kiss. They look like their faces are close together, but it really doesn't look like it is a about to kiss position. Now, I'll tell you what I'll end up doing instead is I like to work on the idea first and then find reference later. and find reference that that backs up what I'm trying to communicate. What I will probably do is figure out, find a photo, or maybe take a photo with my wife and get that position of a couple that's about to kiss, and then draw the bodies around that position. But now I can kind of just loosely block the serpents in here. Let's see here. 47, it says, when you're making comics, you're going to draw everything. You know what? There are people who intentionally, like Mignola I mentioned, but yeah, there's people who definitely are like, no, I'm not doing a comic. Like they're all, if that comic got horses, shine it. I ain't drawing that. I think it depends. If you're somebody who is doing creator-owned work, then you can dictate what you do or don't draw. Or if you're working for a publisher and you at least have a relationship with the writer and the editorial where you can tell them, hey, I want more of this and less of that. Or you pick and choose what gigs you take based on the content. I think that there are artists who may avoid drawing stuff that they don't have fun drawing. And I think that's probably more often than not. I think that usually comes from artists that are more experienced and they don't feel like they have anything to prove. Because I think for younger artists, we do want to learn how to draw everything, and we feel like, oh, okay, I have to get good at doing everything because that's the price of being a professional comic artist. But I think artists who maybe have been around for a while and they've done enough gigs and they don't feel like they have to prove anything to anyone. They're like, I don't enjoy drawing X or Y, so I'm not doing it. Might be somebody who's like, look, I don't like drawing buildings, so I'm not going to work on Spider-Man. Doesn't matter how great Spider-Man or Batman is. If I don't like drawing buildings, there's always, cities full of buildings, so I'm not doing it. I could see a lot of experienced artists taking that route. I don't want to get too caught up in drawing the anatomy because this whole pose is probably going to change once I figure out the pose for the two of them. And I had to remind myself to put some level of like a Roman armor on him to give a sense that he's a warrior. Let's see here. Yeah, this is all going to change because the snakes are very loosely thrown in here. I'm going to completely rework the position of the serpents, the head, probably do a few more thumbnails of the body. So this is another piece. Like this, this is how most of my pieces start. They start with me just having an idea, sketching them around, playing with it, trying to find different looks, different angles until I find the one that really feels like what it wants to feel like. And I like this idea of, instead of trying to find the single perfect one Medusa piece that I'm going to draw, you see I've already got a couple of different versions. And I'm just saying, oh, I can draw all the Medusa pieces. I mean, I'm only limited by how much time I have, which is actually quite a limit these days. But it's worth it to to explore these and say, all right, let me see what happens if I do this piece as a finished piece, do this as a finished piece, and just keep working through them. See, this in this stage, this is where I'm just kind of all over the map, throwing ideas out and trying different stuff. So let's take a look at a piece of, I'm going to draw another thumbnail, and then we're going to wrap it up. But I'm going to try that suggestion that Martin had about them facing each other. Martin also says, I agree, you should lean into your strengths. However, I feel that challenges are the key to growing, but don't torture yourself. You know what? You and I are on the same page, brother. It's, I definitely take that approach. Like I'm trying to constantly push myself, but I don't want to make it unpleasant. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I constantly come at this with an attitude of positivity, because it's real easy to become a sad sack and just be complaining about how, oh, this is too hard. Oh, I can't draw the things that I want to draw. Yeah, most of the things I want to draw, I do not draw as well as I'd like to. Or in order to get a good piece, you saw what I went through with the previous Medusa with the red, the green, and the black. I spent ages working on that, working on the anatomy, working on the values, working on the color. And if I'd spent more time working on the values, I don't think I would have had problems with the color. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, that's why values are so important. I realized that this piece that I was coming back to revisiting, it didn't work because of the values in the ink stage. So I need to remember to work out my values when I'm doing this. When I'm doing like the little black and white sketch before I even do like final line artwork, I need to decide on how I'm going to light it. I need to decide where the lights and darks are going to be. Because if I don't figure that stuff out, then often what I found in the past, a lot of the pieces that I was not happy with, they were because whatever I did in the line art was fighting with how I was trying to color or light it. So I got to think about those things at an earlier stage. And when we come back to the conversation about people that are really experienced, that are really have mastered the craft, I think that those kind of decisions become instinctual. You don't necessarily have to figure them out. You know, you draw them, and that decision-making process is kind of already figured out for you. Whereas in at the stage that I am artistically, I still need to figure these things out. I need to like do them consciously. It's like breathing. A certain point, breathing is not something we have to think about. We just do it. And I think that the decisions about value as part of your composition, they become like breathing for people that are artists that are very experienced. And I'm not at the point yet where that's just instinctual. So what I'm trying to do right now is just figure out how I'm going to arrange their bodies to give them that sense of intimacy. Because for me, what makes this piece work, the concept here of them being sleeping together, or sleeping in terms of the afterglow, what makes it work to me is the feeling of intimacy, the feeling of intimacy and affection. So trying to arrange their bodies so that they are intertwined with each other. So maybe what we do is we take a little bit of your suggestion, Martin, about his hand, instead of having it stiff and straight, I'm going to have it so it's wrapped around her, but he's hovering above because his hands are stiff. So he's kind of got his arms wrapped around her. But frozen. And then she maybe has her arm underneath. And then maybe he's got his shoulder kind of up underneath, up, and then down. Let's see here. Martin says yes, he agrees. Good, glad you're digging it. Negro Frazetta in the chat. What's up? How you doing, man? By the way, I'm gonna post a link on the Discord server and on the Patreon. So this week is gonna be Art Book Study Group again. We're gonna do it on Tuesday, and it was funny. I was talking to my wife earlier today, and I said to her that I realized that the night that I have figure drawing class changes depending on the semester, but I realized that Tuesday is the one night that I don't have that I never have any class. So I thought maybe that's the good night to do Art Book Study Group. She's like, yeah, that makes sense. So I said, you think I would have pieced that out like a year or two ago? But you know what? Better late than never. See here. Anyway, I'm sketching out various thumbnails of alternate versions of this Medusa's Lover piece. And I got to tell you, Martin, I was real hesitant to want to change the version in terms of like having her facing towards him, but this is really working for me. I think that, you know, a lot of times we start drawing pieces, we have a picture in our mind of how it's supposed to go, and anytime something deviates from that picture, we're like, well, that's not it. That's bad. It's no good. And for me, I always pictured this piece with them spooning, because to me, that just, it's such a position of intimate affection. And that's what I really wanted to convey here. But this piece right here, this composition with them just wrapped around each other, I think it gets that. It gets what I was going for. So I am thankful that you made the suggestion, because it pushed me to just get outside of what my preconceived notions of what this piece was going to be, and got me to try something a little bit different, and it works. So that's a lesson to you guys as well. I think I don't act like it, like when I talk to you guys, but I am extremely stubborn. I'm super stubborn. It's not like I don't like criticism. I'm perfectly fine with criticism, But I tend to, when I've made up my mind about something, I tend to be like, well, I've made up my mind. I know what I want. So I appreciate the input, but it's good. I'm doing it my way. Um, but I'm trying not to be like that as much with my art, mainly because I get along really well in my day job with a lot of my coworkers, and I think a big part of that is whenever somebody asks for a change to a piece of art or something I designed, my general attitude is, okay, what do you need? What's the thing that's troubling you about this piece? And do you have some specific things in mind that you want me to change, or do you just want me to give you solutions? I tend to come at it very much more with I'm not defensive. I'm just like, what's going to make everybody happy? How do we do that? And it's silly that it's taken me this many decades of being an artist and a designer, but I'm realizing that I really need to bring more of that attitude to my personal work. See, even this right here, Martin. So I'm trying to do it where the hand is almost in a position where it would be resting on her, but the hand's going to be floating above. I'm just putting a little shadow in here. I don't know how it's going to end up being rendered in the final piece, but I want to give a shadow in there just to indicate that the hand is floating above her body instead of resting on it. And then maybe even do a rounded shadow on the other side, just to give you that sense that his hand's kind of hovering above her while hers are wrapped around. Make this a little bit darker just so I can. Oh, wait, no, I made it bigger instead of up in this opacity. But I kind of want both now because using a larger brush makes me have to use a lighter touch. And I'm always trying to retain that light touch working digitally because it's too easy to get into the habit of pressing too hard. I know, I repeat myself all the time. You guys have heard me say all that crap before. I really like how this is coming out. Let's see here. Negro Frazetta says, I saw your main character on Patreon. I like the scimitar and the round shield. Thank you. Yeah, I'm still messing around with that. On Patreon, I've started putting out some sketches for the next comic because I've been really kind of tight-lipped about what I'm doing next. But I think it's only because I still have a lot of writing to do. And I want to wait until I have the first 6 issues really like solidly written. It's because those first 6 issues might be all there is. My plan is to do 6 issues, put them out, maybe collect them in 3 48-page like graphic novellas, and then wait and see what the response is. And if people love it and want more, then I will do more. And if it's just one of those things where, it's okay, it was cool, then I'll move on to a new story. But I really want to have all of that worked out before I start really showing you guys here on the YouTube or on the live stream. Because I keep forgetting. We got people from Facebook watching now. We have people from Twitch watching now. And I'm trying to remember to include all of them. But I want to wait until I really have those 6 issues locked down in terms of everything that's going to happen in the story and all of the character development before I start announcing anything. Because once I announce it, I want to be able to say, all right, I'm going to show you me. Like, I want to have it written completely so that I can just start drawing either character designs with you guys or drawing actual thumbnails. Like, just dive into it. I'm like, okay, here's the comic. We're going. Because this will be the first time you will be watching me make a comic book from scratch, really. Eye of the Gods was already done when I first started putting stuff online. Morningstar, you got to watch me make it issue by issue, but I think I had already drawn the first issue when I started doing regular YouTube videos, and I don't even remember what issue I was on when I started live streaming. It's probably somewhere around like 3 or 4. In fact, that's something I'm going to go look at. I am curious what issue I was at when I started live streaming. No, that's not right. It's not super important, but I kind of want to have a gesture of her hand kind of curled up, her hand is curled up against his chest, but pressing towards her face. For me, these little details in terms of like what people's bodies and things like what their hands are doing, these are the details to me that really sell what's happening with people. Like that sell the emotion. Gestures, stuff like that. Let's see here. Martin says, love this composition. And they said, floating above is excellent. You get to see that shadow that creates depth. You know what, man? I'm glad I can be in any way inspiring to other creatives. He said, I look up to you because you're a finisher. You get it done. Well, it's funny. I'm a finisher, but I'm stubborn. So I'll finish stuff, but it may take me a few years to get there, but I will finish it. But I have you to thank for this composition because this was not something that I had in mind when I started. So, definitely I appreciate your input too. 47 is got to take off. He says, I got to be off. Good luck with the writing. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your weekend. And I'll talk to you soon, man. And speaking of taking off, I am just going to tighten up a few more details on here, maybe just add some snakes, and then we're going to call it because we're already at hour 23. What's funny is I was thinking to myself that, an hour a week of live streaming is a good amount. But then I look over on Twitch and you've got people that are doing like 4-hour live streams regularly. And I'm like, damn. I mean, I guess it's different when it's 4 hours of playing a game because you're gaming. You want to do that for that long. Whereas, drawing, it's hard to draw for that many hours straight. You need food. For gaming, you need food and rest. But specifically, I think for artists, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like as I've gotten older, I've realized it's important for me to take breaks on a regular basis. Go for a walk, give my eyes a rest from the monitor or the canvas or whatever medium I'm working in. Give my mind a break because just going for a walk or stepping away from the canvas, getting something to eat, those kind of things will refresh my mind and it'll help me maybe see mistakes that I didn't realize I was making. It'll help me find little things to refine. And most importantly, it's good for your back health because you can't it is not good to sit all day. It is very, very bad for you. And I can tell you that you can do that shit when you're in your 20s. Starts to catch up to you in your 30s. When you get into your 40s, you're like, nah, I gotta move around because it'll catch up to you. And you want to be able to be making art your entire life, to have a long, strong, healthy art existence. And a big part of that is just taking care of yourself. And I'll tell you something else I just remembered now as I'm drawing this is I had to move around some of the snakes in this thumbnail because I had all of them doing what the way you tend to do with a Medusa with a Gorgon is having all the snakes twirling in masses and floating around. And I realized that no, I want to draw the snakes asleep because she's sleeping, so they should be sleeping. So that's something that I need to keep in mind on this one is to make sure the snakes feel like they are laying down. Like I probably need to change this guy over here underneath the hand. I need to have him laying flat. So you can still have this bend that he has coming out from underneath the hand, but it has to look like it's bent and laying on the surface of the bed as opposed to right now, the way I've drawn it, the way I conceived it, it feels like it's above the surface like that. And that is absolutely not what I want. I want it laying down on the bed. And I just remembered that as I'm sketching this in now. And when I'm done with this thumbnail, I am going to do a Google search for unmade bed and draw pictures of just what rumpled sheets look like. Because it's very, very simple, but it'll make a difference versus, just having them draw and just scratching some lines in there. That's not going to do it for me. I want it to actually feel like a bed that a couple has slept in. And I think much in the way that I tend to, not tend to, but I sometimes when I'm drawing hands, I'll try to place the hands wherever I want them to be compositionally, and then work backwards towards the arm and the shoulder, and the same with the feet, moving up to the knees. I think with the snakes, it almost might be easier for me to draw the head first. Draw the head first and then figure out what the actual body of the serpent is doing. Now this is making a weird tangent here, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this guy over here the dominant one and have the other serpent coming out, have this one coming out from behind it or under it. I think this will read better as a shadow if I do it with hatched lines. I don't know why, because I mean it's digital. I can just come in with a soft airbrush, draw a shadow in that way. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with this composition. a lot of detail that needs to be worked out. But now I've got at least 3 Medusa pieces to do, because I've got this one that I started with them spooning. I've got the blindfold one. I've got them facing each other. And now with the blindfold one, I honestly, like, I imagined when I first started sketching it, I really thought, I know I said I was going to stop now. One last, like, stick figure drawing. But I originally, at first I thought about the idea of doing something like you have the man, the warrior like this. You've got Medusa with her hands over his eyes, standing behind him. And you've just got the serpents coming down. Like, it's even cut off so you don't necessarily even see her head. So the framing of the composition would be kind of more like this, where you get him and you get her standing behind. It's a very bad stick figure. This is what happens. The faster I draw, the worse it gets. This is me drawing super fast, bad stick figure. But this was another idea I was thinking of. Along with ideas like him being tied up. Doing some stuff that's a little bit more, let's say, sexually explicit without actually showing genitalia. Like doing things where you can definitely tell that they are full on having sex, but without actually showing intimate parts. Iron Rocks says that's their whole thing. You've got a day job in terms of people that are cranking out stuff. You know what? I forget what the context was of that question. I got so caught up in my own rants and rambles. Let's see here. Jay King says, "What's good, people?" He's late to class. He says, "Looks good." Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So, yeah, we're actually going to wrap up here. So, there's always the replay, Jay King. I appreciate you. I know you got to be out there on the streets hustling, handling business. So when you can't make it live, always welcome to catch that replay and leave comments there. Again, Martin, I got to thank you for this. I would not have done this without you. So greatly appreciated. In fact, I think even though this is a really raw, rough sketch, I think that this is the piece I'm going to use for the thumbnail for this video. Even though I had started with this one of them very cuddle. And I'm probably going to name the video something about being open to changing your composition. Something about being open to new ideas. I don't know what it is. I'm going to have a little bit of time to think about it because I'm going to take a little break. Maybe I need to go for a walk, stretch my legs, have a little bit to eat before coming back and getting back into this. And Carol also says those snakes, they're a great field to show off in terms of composition. Yeah, I appreciate it. I think the thing about the snakes is that they're great for composition, but at the same time, you have to be judicious in how you use them, because if you use them poorly, then they can be messy in terms of your composition. Like, for instance, the blindfold one, you can tell right here, if you compare the blindfold to them facing each other, the snake position of them facing each other is much more thoughtful. Mainly because I was trying to get the blindfold piece out, just quickly sketch that down. Whereas I think I really spent more time working out the anatomy in the one of them facing each other. And in working out the anatomy, I spent more time working out the snake placement. And I'm not done with the snakes. I'm probably going to add, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right now. I'll probably end up being anywhere from 9 to 12. So there's going to be a few more snakes added in. I mean, really, it's just a matter of adding them in until it feels like it's the right balance. I've never thought about how many snakes I want any given piece to have. I just add them until I feel like you mentioned with the composition, until it has a nice balance. And I will tell you that even though I don't see any comments from Facebook, I see that I got a thumbs up from someone on Facebook watching. So I appreciate the Facebook Live crowd. Appreciate you guys hanging out. On that note, we are going to close things out here. I mentioned for anyone who is a Patreon subscriber, we've got Art Book Study Group this week on Tuesday. And it's going to be Tuesday going forward for as far as I can see, until there's a reason to change things up again. So, again, everybody, thank you so much for watching, commenting, hanging out, listening, giving me the great feedback. I love you guys. You're awesome. You're the wind beneath my wings. You keep me going. You guys, anybody who wants to become a Patreon subscriber, you can hop into this week's Art Book Study Group. You can also read my comic books for free online digitally. We've got the Art Book Study Group. It's a twice monthly Patreon exclusive live stream where we dig into the best that we can learn. All the best art books out there and try and suck out as much knowledge as we can, see what we can learn from. We've been doing the long series on The Figure by Art Reed. That's a Walt Reed, Art Reed, by Walt Reed. Been checking that out. You can get all of that and more. We've got a thriving Discord server where we share artwork, give each other feedback, comment, share all kinds of information on there. It's a great thing. It's a small, tight-knit community, but we have some fun over there. Check all that out at patreon.com/Jeremy. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a member. There's links in the description to these videos, except on Twitch. You can't put links in the video description. But if you go to my Twitch profile, if you're watching on Twitch, from there you can get links to my Patreon and all of my other places you can find me online, including my monthly newsletter, my free newsletter. Sign up for that. You get a free digital sketchbook. And then once a month, I will shoot you a newsletter with work in progress animated GIFs, little comments about my creative process, what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, all that and more. Newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase some of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you go to amazon.jeremy.net, and you can pick up copies of books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. I'm the writer, the artist, the letterer, the gray toner. I do the whole thing. I do everything but run it through the printing press. It's a 144-page self-contained graphic novel. You can pick that up. You can pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It is Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion, has issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character designs, sketches, thumbnails, page layouts, script excerpts, and more. All of that at amazon.jeremy.net. Again, links in the description. Thank you so much. Love you guys. That's it for now. Go be creative.